This is a secret method that I learned almost 30 years ago at a Gonstead seminar, and I'm going to teach you exactly what this is because I think you could kind of do some of this yourself, and it's to isolate exactly where your problem is when you have neck pain. Many times if you're going to a chiropractor and they're adjusting you, they might be on the wrong segment. Very often if you're adjusting an area like C5, I'm gonna explain what this means, and you're not getting results, it may be possible that the chiropractor is just one or two segments off, and it can make the world of difference. I have had many times in my career that you're adjusting someone and man, I'm just not getting the results that I'm looking for. And then all of a sudden I re-examine them, do something carefully, change. Instead of adjusting C5, you adjust C6, and wham, the patient gets really good results. And I've come up with this screening tool as well as a very detailed way to analyze the spine, and I'm gonna share that with you today. Sometimes people will get neck pain and they just say, oh, my symptoms are all over my neck. Well, that doesn't help us much because we don't really know where to bullet point the problem. So what I do is I have a patient go through certain ranges of motion to try to isolate, is it the upper neck or is it the lower part of the cervical vertebrae that need to be adjusted? Now, I'm assuming that there's very little muscle problems, there's very little of other types of tendinopathies or ligament injuries that we're not dealing with. We're just trying to determine where to do the adjustment. So here's the screening test. Here's how it works. I will have the patient tilt their chin into their neck a little bit and then drop their chin forward. Now what this is doing is it's putting more stress on the joints of the upper part of the neck between the occiput, the C1 called the atlas, and the C2 called the axis, and then C3. So when they do that, they're tensing up the muscles, possibly locking up the joints. And then what I will have them do while they're in this position is I will have them rotate to the left and then rotate to the right. Now, invariably, most of the patients I see statistically, they will rotate equally to the left and equally to the right because very few people really have a lot of upper cervical problems. You will see it, but it's just less common than the lower cervical, which I'm going to show you in just a moment. If a patient pulls their chin in, drops forward, and has a difficult time, let's say, rotating to the left, but an easier time rotating to the right, then that's a discrepancy between sides, and that's exactly what we're looking for. So if you try this yourself and you see a difference between sides, maybe you feel tightness on one side, maybe all you notice is just simply a difference of range of motion. Now this doesn't tell us where to adjust, it gives us a ballpark of where to adjust because now we know that the upper cervical spine between the occiput, C1 and C2 and C3 are involved in the patient's problem. Typically, not always, but typically, the person will get upper cervical symptoms, pain up in the upper part of the neck. They feel like their head is squished down. They will get headaches that go around from the back of the head, across the ear, and over into the forehead. This is very common, but not always. You can't judge it on that. Now, the next test is to determine if the lower cervical spine is involved, kind of between C5, C6, T1, and things like that, C7. So what I will have the patient do is I will have them bend back a little bit, rotate about 45 degrees to one side, and then laterally bend. So I will have them pull their chin back a little bit, extend, rotate to one side, and laterally bend. If the ranges of motion are equal on both sides, then you know the lower cervical spine is not an area that needs to be adjusted. The reason this works is because what we're doing is we're jamming the facet joints on each side, and if there's any inflammation, irritation, restriction of motion, this will be noticeable on this test. Once you do the test and it's not the same, so for example, if I come back and it's very stiff and causes pain on the left, but I can move farther on the right, then we know the problem is on the left for the lower cervical. This is a case where a patient would have symptoms where their symptoms are going down their arm, they get pain in the trap, they often will rub this area, sometimes they'll get pain up in here, sometimes in the front of the chest. So now if I've done that screening test, hypothetically, if someone passed both tests, then I know I'm probably not going to be adjusting their neck. Those are good screening tests. But if any of those tests are positive, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something called motion palpation. And what this looks like is this is a plastic model of the spine. This is the occiput, the back of the head. This is C1. This is C1 right here. You can see under there. This is C2. This is C3 all the way down. This is the front. These are the spinal discs and the individual bones. Now what motion palpation is if I know that a person has a problem in the upper cervical area between the occiput C1 and C2, as well as C3, I will then place my finger on the actual spinal joint itself. And then I will go through these ranges of motion again. I may have them turn. I may have them flex and turn. I may have them go into a neutral position and rotate. And what I'm assessing are the facet joints' ability to rotate in the biomechanically designed way they're supposed to. It's interesting because left and right side, sometimes the screening test will be positive on the left, meaning that they have a hard time rotating to the left, but the restriction is on the right side joint that is supposed to be allowing the spine to rotate to the left. Sometimes the restriction will be on the left side where it won't rotate back. That's something that has to be determined based upon your motion palpation findings. So what it looks like is as I'm doing this on a patient, I will have them flex their head forward and rotate. Sorry, it's falling down there. Rotate like this. I will have them go to the other side and I will place my thumb or my finger on there and rotate. Boy, this is kind of slippery. This patient won't behave. And I'll rotate. And once I determine where the most amount of restriction is, and what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to be like a sniper, just hit it right smack in the middle of the bullseye, you very often get better results than if you just randomly adjust the spine. You'll often see this on YouTube that a patient will lie down and they just go crack and crack. And you think to yourself, did they even try to figure out which vertebrae it was? And the answer is, for a lot of people, a lot of chiropractors, the answer is no, only because as a general rule, if you just mobilize the spine, the majority of the patients will improve. However, it's the patients that don't improve that piss me off, for lack of a better word. It upsets me when a patient doesn't get better. I don't like that. I want all patients to get better. Now, we can't cure everybody of every ill with an adjustment, but if a patient needs an adjustment, the only thing that really can help them is an adjustment. Just like if a muscle is tight, it doesn't matter how much you adjust the patient, it's not going to work, because if the muscle needs stretching, then it needs stretching. If the muscle needs strengthening, the only thing that'll fix a weak muscle is to strengthen it. Likewise, when you have a joint restriction where the joint is not moving in a particular direction, the only thing that's going to get it better is somehow or another, someone's going to have to make that joint move. And it's not under our conscious control, because for most people, two things happen. Number one is, if you have a difficulty rotating your neck, most people are not going to continue to rotate their neck. It's uncomfortable. The second thing is, when there is a joint restriction and you try to rotate your neck, what ends up happening is those joints that are restricted and glued together, they function as if someone poured Elmer's glue in the spine. Those joints don't move. You don't have conscious control of that. So other joints will try to move differently to try to make up the difference and make up the slack. That's called compensation. And very often that's where a patient gets the pain. Most patients that have chronic pain in their spine are experiencing it in areas where the body is compensating, not where the area is restricting. That's why in the beginning, when I told you that these screening tests don't tell us where to adjust, they just give us a ballpark of where to adjust, where the restrictions might be most noted. Then, by using motion palpation, where you move the spine, that's called the motion, and then you're palpating the spine with your fingers, and it takes years to learn how to feel that joint, that subtle joint motion, and in which direction. Then you can pinpoint exactly which joint you're moving, how you're going to move it, which direction you're going to move it, and the angles that you're going to move it. Then you get better results. And I don't care whether you use your hands to do adjustments or something like an instrument, like an arthro-stim. It really doesn't matter. What matters is the accuracy. Just like a sniper, you could shoot bullets all over the place and hit no one. We've seen that in all the John Wick movies, right? They just can't seem to hit John Wick. But yet John Wick, with a certain amount of accuracy, hits everybody right between the eyes like a sniper. And that's how I work as a chiropractor when I'm looking for areas of how to do the adjustments, where to do the adjustments. And because I've been doing it for over 28 years, I can do this very seamlessly, and patients very often don't even know what's happening because I do it in such a smooth, easy fashion. But nonetheless, if you take your time and you figure out the precise location where that person needs an adjustment, the joints that you need to adjust, the directions that you need to adjust, you get much better results. And that's what I've found in my practice, and I hope that helps you in figuring out where your problems are and what needs to be done. If you'd like to see an example of me treating a patient, I'll put one down here on the right side at the end. If you want to do a consultation with me, if you're not in my area and you can't see me as a doctor, but you have questions, we do phone and Zoom consultations. All my information is down in the description. You can just go to my website and get that information and contact us. As well as, I do appreciate people following me on YouTube. And if you're a Patreon, I do appreciate if you could join Patreon, contribute to this channel. It helps this channel grow. Lastly, there is a join button on my channel. There's 3 tiers that you can join, and I would appreciate your support. So watch this video right now on how I analyze a patient. Yeah, go ahead and watch. It's a good video. I put a lot of effort into it. Cool.